Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone, the miserable liberal, and hi.
Howdy, howdy.
Hello.
So what I love is that every once in a while, Donald Trump hits on a huge truism that no one else will talk about in the establishment press or establishment politics. And he's been doing it with Jeff Bezos. And, even the Business Insider noticed, right? So Trump has waged a year-long war against Amazon, and its day of reckoning could be coming.
Oh, what?
So this is from that. So he's been tweeting out stuff like this. Why is the United States Post Office, which is losing many billions of dollars a year, while charging Amazon and others so little to deliver their packages, making Amazon richer and the post office dumber and poorer? Should be charging much more. I don't think the post office does lose billions of dollars a year.
I know, yeah, there's no way it's that much.
There's I know that the Congress had tried to bankrupt the post office on purpose by making them prepay their retirement benefits to their employees by 70 years or something. Some crazy, remember that? They were literally trying to so that was their way to try to bankrupt the post office because they had to fund their retirement decades out. It was crazy. That's just the right-wingers trying to break government because they want to privatize the mail service. And so right now, Amazon still uses the post office to do a lot of their deliveries, like the last couple miles or whatever that is, that UPS doesn't do or FedEx. The government does it. And Sundays too. So they're starting to. So he's hitting on something here, although I'm sure he's getting some of those facts. Did we find out if the post office...
So according to the fiscal report, when you take in that retiree health benefit, when you take that into account, they had to report a net loss of $5.6 billion for the fiscal year.
So
that's
they're not,
2016.
That's not really a loss.
Mm-hmm.
That's money that they're investing in.
And no other government agency or private company has to do that. By the way,
no. And the reason they're doing that is again, I'll say it again, they're trying to break the post office and make it not say, look, they're losing money.
Mm-hmm. So based on the way they have to report it,
right,
what he said wasn't necessarily not true.
Right. So he's technically...
I want to add one more thing. According to The Nation, it says it has significantly exceeded the level required for the reserves the post office has.
Oh, okay. So he's right about this. He is right about that. That why doesn't the post office charge Amazon more money? I don't know how they could do that, but I'm sure there's a way they could do it with barcodes and what have you, right?
And you know what? Can I tell you what The Nation says? This is from 2013, The Nation, because that's when that was happening. It says that using ratepayer funds, it has built a war chest of over $326 billion to address its future liabilities.
Jesus. Okay, so there's some more tweets by him. He goes, is fake news Washington Post being used as a lobbyist weapon against Congress to keep politicians from looking into Amazon's no tax policy? That was from July. He tweeted that.
No tax monopoly.
No tax monopoly. Now, lots of states have been closing that loophole for Amazon because it's just the craziest thing. Amazon would be allowed to come in and not pay local taxes or state taxes, hollow out your business, your property tax base, your business property tax base, and make all the money, and then close all those stores down. You lose your property tax base, and then they come in and open up a store. And that's what Amazon did. They're opening Amazon Books, by the way, after they put Borders out of business and Barnes and Nobles or whatever. Now they're opening their own brick and mortar stores. Did you know Amazon's doing that? So they had these sweetheart deals where they don't have to pay tax and all this stuff. And by the way, Amazon doesn't have to make a profit. That's another thing people forget. Amazon doesn't have to make a profit. How can you compete with someone, with a competitor who doesn't have to turn a profit and doesn't have to pay taxes? So a lot of states have tightened that up. There's still, I'll double check. Can you double check to see if Amazon still doesn't pay state taxes? But the general point is right that is the Washington Post being used as a lobbyist weapon against? Yes, I think, of course. Why do you think Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, who sits on a Pentagon board, a guy who owns a newspaper, also in bed with the military-industrial complex, gets worse. He's also in bed with the frickin' intelligence community, meeting the CIA to the tune of $600 million, which is way more than his paper is worth. So think about that. So again, or what is that saying? A stop clock is right twice a day. So but he's right. He's right, and this is stuff that he's right. No one else is saying this. I don't hear politicians complaining about Amazon.com. I don't hear politicians complaining about Washington Post being owned by the guy who owns Amazon.com. And we reported when there was a journalist at the Washington Post who wrote a critical story of the employment practices, the abusive employment practices by Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and he got disciplined. We reported that. Amazon is doing great damage. This is from him from August. Amazon is doing great damage to tax-paying retailers. Towns, cities, and states throughout the U.S. are being hurt, many jobs being lost. So the Business Insider says, given all the attacks, it appears the administration is on a collision course with the company. Trump is interested in taking on the corporation, and it could mean Amazon's days as a darling of Washington, D.C. are numbered. Well, we'll see. Because Jeff Bezos can buy politicians, and he can also use the influence of the Washington Post to scare them and say, hey, if you want. But I don't know if we ever reported this story. I think we were out of town when it broke, and we never got around to it. The story about how the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, laid down discipline rules for their reporters and people who work for the Post, that they couldn't say anything in social media.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
That offended their advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you right, you couldn't.
Yep.
What? Newspaper guys can't be critical of corporations? Yes, that's what that means. And the way you can get around Washington Post being critical of you is advertise with them. That's what that means.
Yep.
Advertise with us, and there's a rule in place that our journalists can't ridicule you in public.
Yeah, well, and that's why people advertise with the corporate media in general.
Like
we've said on this show, the oil and gas companies aren't just trying to get the word out. Like, hey, did you know you need gas in your car? You might not have known that. No, they're looking for favorable coverage, and they get it.
You mean people aren't looking to buy a jet from Boeing? Maybe Boeing is advertising on Meet the Press to fund their non-investigations. Is that what they're doing? Because that's what that is. Why does Walmart and the oil fossil fuel industry and the military-industrial complex, why do they advertise on establishment news shows? So that they go easy on them. Exactly. And it was almost explicitly laid out at the Washington Post's guidelines for their reporters. We did cover that?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
So that really happened. That really did. You can't do anything that would, I think it said even embarrass, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we looked into all the verbiage. It was so vague where it's like, well, you basically can't be critical at all.
You can't
Don't mention their name.
Because it's so yeah.
Yeah. So, again, there's lots of good reporting that gets done at the Washington Post. They're spending enough money, right?
Yeah, there's bound to be a few diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, pay me a couple $100,000 a year, I will get you a couple good stories. Come on, right? Anyway, so what do you think they mean in the Business Insider by that? That Amazon's days as a darling of Washington D.C. are numbered. What do you guys and gal?
That almost hurt you saying that.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff Bezos is, he's buddies with weapons manufacturers, with the CIA. We know that. We've covered that plenty on this.
Right. And Trump's also at war with the CIA, with the intelligence community, actually, right?
Right. So that's why I think that, this is a nice sentiment, but I think as far as Jeff Bezos' buddy-buddy relationship in Washington, D.C., at least how I interpret that, Trump's not going to play any role in that one way or another. Him and Trump just don't like each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder why that is.
I mean, I guess when you have that kind of wealth, it's just like I have a feeling you're always in a big pissing contest.
Yeah.
So they probably butted heads that way.
And Trump,
I don't think Trump has some moral opposition. I think
right?
it's
No,
just,
he thinks this is fantastic to rig the system in your favor if you can. That's what you're supposed to do. You're a good businessman if you do it. He think that all that stuff. He thinks maybe you're right. It's just that there's a guy who's everyone knows is richer than me.
Mm-hmm.
When you were asking like, well, what do we think about this? And I'm just thinking like, wow, if he's no longer the darling, Amazon's no longer the darling, maybe they're going to figure out the fulfillment sites are horrible and have awful working conditions.
Yes.
And maybe they're going to make it better for the employees that work in those warehouses. And because I'm looking at one article that's written, PolitiFact, however you want to deal with that, they said that Amazon last year made over $136 billion in sales. I think they can afford safe, healthy working conditions.
You would think.
Mm-hmm.
You would think they could. Of course they can. But that's not how corporations work, right? Corporations are like psychopaths. It isn't let's make as much profit as we can without hurting anyone or wrecking the environment. It's we have to make more profit, and that's it. And it doesn't matter. And if we have to kill people to do it, or if we have to poison stuff, whatever we do. So whenever you hear a phrase like, hey, the corporation decided to do the right thing, they decided to do the thing that would cost them the least money. That's not the right. If a corporation literally can make more money killing you and fighting it in court, they will. Like a car company. Like if they figure out, like, well, we could recall, we could do this safety thing on this car, but we figured out that we'll probably only be sued by 5 or 6 people a year, and we'll probably only have to pay out a few $1 million a year. And so it's actually going to save us money to just let people get killed.
How much is this recall versus...
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, and I learned that from Jerry Spence, right? Who used to have a TV show on MSNBC, but he told the truth about stuff like that, and they got rid of him right away.
See, I learned this from the movie Fight Club. I know this because Tyler knows this.
Fight Club.
Really? What about
the main character in Fight Club? That was his job, and he was telling people on a plane what they do, and he's like, yeah, if a recall costs more, we just let the faulty cars out
They
there.
talked about that in that movie?
Yeah, and then the person on the plane's like, what car company do you work for? And he just goes, a major one. Yes. Great movie and great book too.
That is true.
I wanted to highlight one more thing. It says in this PolitiFact.com, it says they define what monopoly is, and they go, monopoly law typically kicks in when a company controls about 75% of a given market.
Amazon,
of a given market. And they continue this, Hovenkamp said, he noted that in 2000, Microsoft was deemed to be a monopoly because of its control over 90% of the market for Windows-based computers. But no U.S. tribunal, whether federal or state court, or the Federal Trade Commission has ever found Amazon to be a monopoly.
I think they could say yet. I think they could add yet to that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at 50.
50% of all internet sales in the United States go through Amazon.com.
How is that not a monopoly?
50% of all internet
So if they get to 75, I guess definitionally it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they have 75% of certain markets inside the, you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Right? So I'm sure there's lots of stuff inside that they're selling that they dominate the market. Anyway, it's crazy that we live in the richest country and everybody's so poor and treading water, and 60% of all bankruptcies are due to people getting sick. 75% of those people who go bankrupt actually have insurance. Look, we have this crazy system. It's oppressive. There's just a handful of people getting filthy rich, and everyone else is treading water, and no one seems to give a shit. Nancy Pelosi certainly doesn't. Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes certainly don't give a shit because they're pushing corporatism. That's what they're pushing. And they're reporting net neutrality. I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's a big deal, I can tell you that. Rachel Maddow will tell you it's a big deal, but she won't tell you which way.
It's a thing that'll happen.
Yeah, it definitely is going to happen.
I just want to add 2 more elements here. They say only 13% of Amazon's profits went to federal, state, local, and foreign taxes from 2007 through 2015, according to an analysis by S&P Global Market Intelligence. For the sake of comparison, which you really want to know, that's about half the average amount S&P 500 companies paid over the same period.
So they're not paying their taxes, their fair share of taxes. Amazon and Trump he's on to something.
And here's one more point.
So that's the thing, and no one will talk about that.
That's what he's talking about,
yes.
right? And he goes on to say, Amazon's combined tax burden also falls well below the official U.S. corporate tax rate of 35%. In fact, one study found Amazon paid just a 9.3% effective federal income tax between 2008 and 2012.
What was their effective tax rate?
9.3. So
wow.
even with the bogus new rules,
they pay less taxes than we do.
They're still really low.
Yeah,
because it's going to be like 20.
They pay less taxes than I do. They pay less taxes than you do, percentage wise. I mean, you pay a higher tax rate than Jeff Bezos' Amazon. That's amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing what's happening in this country. And there's two things. It was Bill Clinton when he deregulated the media. So now instead of having 50 media companies and some of them telling you the truth, now we have 6 media companies and none of them telling you the truth about the important things, meaning war, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, the CIA, the new Red Scare, single payer, free college, all that stuff. They're not telling you the truth about that. They're not. That's why we have a show. So that's why we're here, because the people aren't informed. And half the country knows it. That's why they don't show up to frickin' vote, because they know they're screwed.
But with that huge tax break, Jeff Bezos is providing good goods to the people.
Yeah.
You know, like jobs where adult diapers or office supplies. He's doing that.
So don't you kind of want to know, like, why, this article highlights that because of a 1992 Supreme Court ruling effectively restricts states from forcing online retailers to pay state and local sales tax if the company has no brick or mortar property or employees in the state. So that was something that came about in 1992. The court's ruling left the door open for Congress to override its decision through legislation, and Amazon has lobbied Congress to do so by passing the Marketplace Fairness Act, which would subject online retailers to state sales tax.
So that last part, can you read that to me again?
The court's ruling left the door open for Congress to override its decision through legislation, and Amazon has lobbied Congress to do so by passing the Marketplace Fairness Act, which would subject online retailers to state sales tax.
So I'm still.
So it sounds like Amazon supposedly has lobbied for Marketplace Fairness Act.
Why would they do that?
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense. Why would they lobby to have themselves pay more taxes?
Amazon wrote, "We support a federal law that would allow states to require sales tax collection by remote sellers under a nationwide system," Amazon wrote in 2016 regulatory filing. Currently, according to this is like a July 2017 article, Amazon does not have physical buildings or employ workers in all the states where it charges taxes. Though its footprint has grown in recent years and may grow larger, still, if it plans to acquire Whole Foods comes to fruition. So they're saying that it's not a tax monopoly. There's a no tax monopoly on this, but they certainly have had greater advantages, like you were saying, than the rest of us with taxes.
Well, and I think Amazon plans on having more employees in a lot of states, first of all. And second of all, supporting something like that, they're just going to throw that sales tax at the consumer anyway. And they're still, and it's not like their sales are going down. So in a way, it was sort of just, them showing good face and looking into the future.
Right.
So they are right now officially paying taxes in every state that has a state tax?
Yeah, they collect the sales taxes from the customer.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's recent.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't always the case.
That's as of April 2017.
That's as of April 2017. Yeah. Okay. Here's Dylan Ratigan. I don't know if you know Dylan Ratigan. He told the truth about the banks, that they're extracting wealth from America and that we should set up our own state-funded banks. And I don't know if you know, but he hasn't been seen on television since. So he said it. He made the case. So here's what he has to say about Jeff Bezos.
The real issue in America is the concentration of resources in an incredibly small number of hands, whether it's Google and Facebook, whether it's the two political parties in our political system, or whether it's what's happening with Amazon, a beautiful vision, an incredible executive, an incredible company, but a disastrous effect on our society as we're seeing the complete concentration of power, and as a result, the destruction of the ability for a truly competitive capitalist environment. So while it is impressive to see, and I have incredible respect for Jeff Bezos and what he has done, it is a total abdication of the authority of the antitrust commissions in this country to allow this level of consolidation of power to continue, and it's reflected not only in our politics, but as we saw with the Amazon deal, in our business.
So there you go. There's Dylan Ratigan laying it down for you. The amazing concentration of power and wealth in this country, and our regulatory bodies should be doing something about it. And of course, they're not. And why aren't they doing anything about it? Because our government's bought by the people they're supposed to be regulating. That's why we live. This is why this is happening. This is why half the country's poor or low income. 63% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. 50% of all wage earners earn less than $30,000 a year. In the richest country in the world. 60% of all bankruptcies because of people get sick. 75% of those people have health insurance. They still go bankrupt. Bankrupt. That's what we do to people in the United States when workers get sick. You go bankrupt. There you go. And no one's doing a goddamn... Do you hear Chuck Schumer screaming about we got to break up Amazon? Do we got to re-regulate the internet? We got to figure this out? Because we can't have one company controlling 50% of our internet sales. We can't do that. That's the unintended consequences of that are going to be huge. By the way, what the unintended consequences are that they're hollowing out local economies. That's one of them. Because he doesn't have to have a brick and mortar store. There's lots of unintended consequences to that. On another unintended, he lowers the, he comes in with these slave wages, right? Paying people not a living wage, rather than air condition his fulfillment center, he'll put an ambulance outside and take people who pass out to the ambulance because that's less money. Did you remember we talked about? That's what corporations do. They're psychopaths. They don't try to make as much money while still being good to people in the environment. They try to make as much money, and if you got to drop dead, you drop dead. They don't care. That's why you need regulations, protections. So there you go. And the bad thing is that Trump is doing it, so everyone will dismiss it. But if there was anybody else in the Democratic Party or another Republican that have balls to do that, but you're not going to see it because of the power of the Washington Post, the power of Jeff Bezos, all the money. He's in bed with the CIA, and as Chuck Schumer told us, they've got 50 ways to Sunday to get back at you if you screw with them. So that's why Jeff Bezos is in bed with the CIA. That's why he's in bed with the Pentagon. And then he's got every politician afraid of his paper. This is not good for democracy. First of all, we don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, and that's just more signs of it. This is more signs that we live in an oligarchy. We live in an oligarchy. And again, no one cares. The Democrats don't talk about it. The Democrats don't have a plan to fix that. They have nothing. They have nothing. We're not as shitty. And that's why we're left. So we're going to get rid of Trump eventually. And guess what? We're going to be left with nothing. We're going to be left with
Emperor Bezos.
Sorry, go ahead.
Or Emperor Bezos.
Yeah.
We all may see that day.
Yep. Yep. And they'll tell us it's good for us and that we actually wanted it and we actually voted it in. That's what they'll say. They say we voted in Trump, even though he got less votes. Imagine if that happened in Russia. Imagine if Putin got less votes than his opponent and he still got in. Imagine that, what the people would be saying. But that's our country. They say we vote. This is our system. We just have to accept it. And nobody's trying to change that system where the loser who gets less votes gets to be the president and the leader. No one wants to change that system. Why? Isn't that crazy? Oh, because that helps the oligarchy. And the donors don't want to change that system. So, again, this is what we're left with. We're left with this banana republic, this joke of a government which is completely corrupted. Not a little, completely corrupted. And the Democrats are just a eeny-beeny, teensy-weensy, tiny less corrupted. And that they think that makes them saints. That makes them the answer to our problems. They are the problem. Our politicians are the problem. That's the problem. Please make sure you're subscribed, because if you think you are, they probably unsubscribed you a couple of times already. So please check, make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell. And please, if you can support the show, become a patron or through PayPal. And we do live shows February 16th in Burbank, California is our next live show. Thanks for your support.